Hey everyone, Chris here, and this is the first of what I'm hoping to be a regular occurrence of midweek Insanity Check content. I host the Insanity Check once a week, but as you can imagine, sometimes there's just too much material to cover, even when we do a 3-hour show. Just so much shit happens in a week. So I feel like recording some mini solo episodes would be a pretty cool thing to do. Also, it would give me a chance to test out some equipment I have. Today, I'm testing out this Beach Tech audio adapter for my camera, and yeah, I think it's going to be really helpful for our interviews in San Diego and New York Comic Con, so we can go directly into the camera, get better audio with our, instead of trying to have it sync it up later on. Plus, I think it's also going to work really well for my YouTube videos. So, wanted to see how the audio would sound if I extracted it out and used it for a solo show as well. So you guys are being part of my experiment, so we're going to see how this works out. So anyway, for this mini episode, I want to talk a little bit about the Me Too movement and the so-called backlash it's facing because of us poor defenseless men who are just losing everything we have because of little allegations. That's just fucking bullshit, right? But there's an aspect of this that I wanted to get into that kind of deals with race, and I know people are going, oh no, he mentioned race, but hear me out on this one. I think it's going to be pretty good. First, this Aziz Ansari situation. Look, at best, he's just a creep, and that's not really that much better. At worst, he pressured a woman into doing something she didn't want to really do, and he did it knowing exactly where the line of legality was. And let me tell you guys, that is not something you want to be at. Either way, it's bad, and this is behavior that men need to stop doing. There's no defense for it. There's no, but it was illegal. It wasn't illegal. No, it's bad. Period. That's it. It wasn't illegal argument also is a really cop-out. It's like when 30-year-old men lust over 16 and 17-year-old girls and go, well, 16 is the age of consent in my state. It's fucking creepy. It's disgusting. You're wrong. Also, using the age of consent laws that were, if we're being real, were dictated by other men, so you're not really making yourself looking that much better. Also got to consider the same thing goes in with the sexual harassment and sexual assault cases. It's like, yeah, our definition of what sexual assault is and what sexual harassment is was dictated by men. Like this idea that somehow women were driving this conversation of what the law said when it comes to these kind of things, that's fucking bullshit. We all know it. It's like there's like a handful of female legislators in our government. So this idea that it's women who dictate what is legal and what isn't, and when it's us assaulting their own bodies, that's fucking. I don't understand where you guys are getting this shit from. I mean, that's just fucking wrong. It's we as men, do these things to women, and then we also get to say what is and isn't legal. Like, it's just stop. Like that. But it wasn't illegal argument is so down. It's not the route you want to go. Just stop right now. Seriously, let that one go. But anyway, this isn't what I wanted to get into. While there have been plenty of people showing their asses today about this terrible behavior and trying to defend it, there's been plenty more fighting back. So I don't really want to rehash what others have been saying about this. They got it. They handled it. Good job, guys. What I wanted to do, though, was talk about kind of the whitewashing of the Me Too movement and how it's just another example of how these conversations fail women of color and particularly black women. Now, before I go on, I want to say that I am using part of my privilege here because as a man, I'll get a lot of reaction and props for saying what I'm about to say. But all I'm doing is repeating and amplifying what black women have been shouting for years. I mean, like literally shouting for years. I mean, if you want a perfect example of this, for instance, the whole Me Too movement was started by Tarana Burke 10 years ago. 10 fucking years ago. Yet it didn't get mainstream push until Alyssa Milano, Rose McGowan, and others, white women, spoke up and pretty much made it their own and erased Burke from the picture. And that in one way kind of sums up the problem with white feminism. And I'm not saying that Milano and McGowan were wrong for coming forward or speaking out. It's not that any of these white women's opinions on this topic are less than, black women. The problem is that consciously or subconsciously, these white women have stood on the backs and necks of black women to amplify their own struggles. And then we know this for a fact, a historical fact, they rarely reach back to pull up these black women with them. And just so white women don't think I'm piling on to them, as a black man, I can admit that we do this to black women all the time. The black male victims of police brutality get a lot of coverage and support, while black women who suffer just as much at the hands of police, and if not more, because they're also the daughters of the mothers and the loved ones of these men who died. Like, they don't get any support. we erase their struggle all the time to amplify our own, and that's just what happens, and it's wrong. This even happens on the flip side with rape apologists who defend rapists. Take Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby's defenders will point to the fact that he's only been accused because of racism. That these white women had it out for Cosby, and that the reason he's been accused, and that's the reason he's been accused. Apparently, it didn't matter that there were actually black women who also accused Bill Cosby. You know, Lily Bernard and Beverly Johnson apparently didn't exist. It's just happens all the time. Like you see, and again, I'm saying this that as a black man, I've seen this happen before. We will literally, it's funny. We will ignore the black women who are victims, and then we'll pick out one or two, and then claim that the black women aren't putting enough attention on those black women. It's the most convoluted, ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. I would say I don't understand it, but coming as a man, I do understand it because this is what we fucking do. At this point, I can't even say I don't understand. Like I said, I totally understand why we do it. It's wrong, and we need to stop. And it's not just there. I mean, a friend of the show, Leslie Mack, has pointed out several times that Harvey Weinstein only decided to speak up and directly address one of the women whose accusations were against him. And that was Lupita Nyong'o. Like, it just so happens she's the only black woman to speak up at the time. Even more interesting, Leslie pointed out, was that none of the other women accusing Weinstein or the media really came to Lupita's defense. They kind of just glossed over the fact that he only specifically, denied her. This is just a pattern we see all the time with black women. Black women lead the way, shout out from the rooftop, they do all the legwork. Then the rest of us come in and we take what they've done, stand on their shoulders, and take it for our own, and we leave them behind. It just always happens this way. Consider this. Over the last few years, I mean, it's been a while, but particularly the last few years, there have been several pretty explosive exposés on R. Kelly and how much of a child predator piece of shit he is. I want to say the last one was last year, where he was basically accused of grooming young girls for a sex cult. And this wasn't just speculation. It came from a woman who was basically left his group and left his grass. He was exposing it. Sure, there was a little bit of coverage, and yes, people talked about it. But one, black women spend so much of their time pointing to R. Kelly's fan base, which is black women, while conveniently overlooking all the men, black and white, who continue to work with him. Like, I want to take a moment here to just really go into this. Like, yes, there are black women who are supporting, and they are the main fan base of R. Kelly. But as far as I'm concerned, that is a symptom, not the cause here. I mean, if you're looking at the women, and again, I think these women who are still fans and supporting R. Kelly, they disgust me. But you know who disgusts me even more? The men who run the music industry who continue to work with R. Kelly. Like, we have said this, I don't think anybody would argue that men, black and white and other races, run the music industry. Like, we do. All right? If we as a collective decided that we no longer wanted to put up with R. Kelly's bullshit and he was done, out of there, there would be no concerts. There would be no studio time. There would be nobody making beats for R. Kelly. He would literally just be, this guy alone. And I'm not saying that he still wouldn't be a predator. He still wouldn't have this problem. Yes, he would. But we as a collective could really shut R. Kelly down if we wanted to. The idea I always see from men is, especially black men, we tend to turn this on to black women. So by saying that R. Kelly exists because women support him and his fans are there, we're basically removing our own responsibility out of it. We're saying, well, if it's black women fans are going to be there, then I feel better at going ahead and supporting him with studio time, supporting him with giving beats and doing collaborations with him. But even more than that, if you remember that expose from last year, thanks Maximus, the woman that left his group even said that R. Kelly had a bunch of other black male friends who would also participate in these things. So let's not pretend like this is just, an industry supporting somebody who makes a bunch of money. There are a bunch of men who are also supporting the evils that R. Kelly are doing because they're doing them themselves. Like, I just wanted to make that very, very fucking clear about that. I went on a little tangent there, but I had to point that out. The second thing that I want you to think about with this R. Kelly thing is, there really wasn't a lot of solidarity from white feminists when, like, the ones you see speaking out now. And I'm not saying all of them were silent, but it's nothing like what we're seeing now. There was no Me Too movement for the women that R. Kelly is abusing. It just seems like, once again, when the victims are black women, the silence from everyone else is deafening. Lastly, I would like to point out that something that black women feminists have pointed out for years. During these whitewashed Me Too discussions and the revelations you get with a lot of these, and a lot of stuff, some of the same white women were the same white women that came out and were shaming black women like Beyonce and Rihanna for what they wear, while now they're saying that, hey, yeah, what you wear shouldn't matter. Like, they literally feminist checked, Beyonce and all these other women who dare show their bodies, and somehow said that they weren't representing actual feminism. It's just, like, that's not lost on me, and it definitely isn't lost on these other black women who are doing a lot of this work here and have been speaking out a lot of this work. To be told every time after time again that your feminism doesn't count, but it counts enough for me to take your work and make it my own. Like, it's obviously white supremacy, but again, I don't want to leave it just at race either with this, because as a black man, I know we do the same thing. Look, we all need to step up and do better. And if you agree with what I'm saying here and want to know how to do better, then here's a little challenge. For every time you share this video, watch this video, listen to this podcast, also go out, read, share, and support 10 black women who talk about the same topic. I guarantee you I'm only touching the surface here because that's all I can do. Black women can go into way more nuance and way more detail than I ever could. Like, I'm actually getting my information from other black women. That's where I'm getting this stuff from. So if you don't know where to start, I mean, first of all, I hate that idea because Google, do like we do with everything else. But hey, start with Burke. Her campaign has been going on for 10 years. Find a black woman that supported her and who she supports. Race is definitely a factor here. Like, it's just, we're only talking about these other women because they're white. As a sidebar, I want you to think about, when you think race, when you say race doesn't matter, think about the pay disparity between male actors and female actors. Like, there's a $40 million pay gap between, I think, Emma Stone and Mark Wahlberg. God, Mark Wahlberg. But you know what's interesting about that? In that top 10, there's not a single black woman on the female side. I don't think there's really any women of color either. So it's like, I know a lot of you might be listening to this and going, hey, well, race doesn't really matter. We're all coming together. Well, yeah, it's just not true. Like I said, like, I want to say Emma Stone makes like 26 million, and they had her worth, and then it was like Mark Wahlberg, out of all people, was like 68. So that's a huge pay gap discrepancy. But again, in that top 10, you look at that entire top 10, not a single woman of color. So, like, there's the huge pay gap between men and white women, but then there's an even bigger pay gap between white women and every other woman of color. Like, so, like, we can't just sit there and say we all come together and it's bigger than race. It's never bigger than race. Race is always mad. It just fucking does. So please don't try to, I'm not trying to make this just about race, but I mean, everything is kind of about this race. We live in a racist country. I mean, come on, guys. We got Trump as president. What the fuck? Other women you can check out, obviously Leslie and Marissa from Safety Pin Box. They are a great resource. Not only do they drop a lot of free gems on their social media accounts for free, but they have a subscription box service that is great for white people who want to know how to really combat white supremacy. And the great thing is that money goes directly to generating, and supporting other black women. You can read up on the stories of Beverly Johnson and Lily Bernard. You can read Lupita's New York Times article. Hell, MTR's very own Shanna wrote something about the Me Too movement over at Project Fandom, which is a site also run by a black woman. So, like, you can find black women to support who will go into way more details about all this. Like, it's not hard. Like, Google it. At this point, if you want to see real change, you have to be a part of that and making sure that the movements like the Me Too movement that get hijacked and whitewashed get reset to include the women that started them. So again, thanks for listening and watching, or watching, because you might not be watching this. I'll be doing a lot more of these little short videos / short solo episodes. You can always find them on YouTube, as well as subscribing to the Insanity Check podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google. Or just go to insanitycheck.mtrnetwork.net and you can find out more of this stuff. So Again, folks, thank you guys very much for listening, and I'll be back soon. Thank you, guys.